In this video, I'm going to talk about the top 10 solo RPGs that I want to play. Or maybe a better title is the top 10 solo RPGs that I want to complete. Now, before I get started, I want to remind everybody that I do design and sell games. My website is below, and I do have a Patreon page, and the link to that is below as well. So here are the top 10 solo RPGs that I want to play or am currently playing. I'm going to start with some honorable mentions, the first of which is Forbidden Lands. I saw this at a game store about a year ago and bought it on a whim and was not disappointed. It's got a very, very cool setting that lends itself really well to exploration, which is kind of my grail mechanic. If a system has really good exploration mechanics that go beyond procedural generation, then I'm very happy, and Forbidden Lands is very good in that realm and gets very, very close to my grail exploration game, but it doesn't quite get there. And it's got a really cool setup. I really enjoyed playing a little bit of Forbidden Lands when I started. And I actually did start a solo campaign in Forbidden Lands where I was doing 4 magic users. I forget what they're called in this system, but I had a master magic user and 3 apprentices. I set up a small little mechanical system where they each had an overall goal and they each had a relationship tracker between each of them, and that helped determine their different actions during different events. The reason I didn't continue with this was kind of twofold. One of the first things that happened when I was playing this was one of the apprentices messed up some magic and somehow summoned a demon, and that kind of threw it was very cool focus for the game, but it took the game in a direction I was not expecting it to go. And the other reason is they're exploring the wilderness, moving around the wilderness, I think works really well in Forbidden Lands with solo play. But when you get to a city or a site or something like that, a castle of some kind, the way the resources are set up really makes me want to have a dungeon master or a game master leading me through those rather than doing solo play. So I wanted to wait to see if anybody else had found a good way to play it solo before I continued my campaign. And that's why right now it's an honorable mention and not higher on my list. I am going to be moving around and using some of the resources around me, some of the books, because they're nearby as I go through this list. Another honorable mention is an old school D&D module called Lathan's Gold. Now, I believe this is for thieves. Let me just double check here. And it doesn't say on my list, but I have it over here, but I'm not going to dig through and find it. But it is a solo old school Dungeons and Dragons module. And I am currently trying to get my hands on all of those, trying not to spend too much money in doing so, and trying to play my way through all of those. And so that's why it's on the list. It's not higher because I have some other ones I'm more interested in that are higher on my list. And the final honorable mention is a sci-fi game that I'm designing similar to Star Smuggler, which I made another video about. And it is something that I'm very excited about playing, but it's not quite there yet for me to begin a solo campaign. So that is why it is also an honorable mention. So there are the honorable mentions. Let's get to the top 10 solo RPGs I want to play or am currently playing. The first is something that I call Czech Alchemist or Prague Alchemist. Now, this game is loosely built around the advanced Dungeons & Dragons system. In fact, to play, all I do is I take out the Dungeon Master's Guide and I use a whole bunch of random tables that are included in that old school Dungeon Master's Guide. And then I also have characters just based on a really basic rule set. The rest of it, though, is made up. And the genesis of this is I got this really epic looking journal here, leather journal for Christmas or maybe an anniversary like 2 or 3 years ago. And I probably just let it sit for 6 months. And I was trying to answer the question, what do I do with the journal that is leather bound, has this nice long like wrappy thing, and is really quite well put together and quite large. What do I do with something like this? And I realized that the answer was I wanted to play a solo RPG that explored and designed a world as I played it. And so that's what I did. At the time, I was doing a lot of research into the history of the Czech Republic, of Česky, of Czechoslovakia, that kind of region of the world, because a lot of my family comes from there. And I realized that, hey, not only would this be a good marriage of those two things, of RPGs and the history and research that I'm doing, but also it explores an area of magic and setting that is not often explored. And it's this golden era of alchemy, which was kind of taking place in Prague in the year, the 1400s, maybe correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there. But that it's such a cool time period, and there's just not a lot of RPGs that really dig into alchemy during that time period. And that's the setting that I wanted to use for this system. And so that's what I do when I play. I sit down, I get out this journal, which is actually kind of hard to use. I have different pages in here explaining what cities, landmarks. I have character sheets all folded up like this. I have a table of contents to make sure I know where each page is. I have maps like this, and it's just really fun. It's an enjoyable thing to do. I should play it more, but I don't, and that's the reason why it's number 10 on the list, is because the scope of this project is huge. It will end when the journal is complete, and it's just hard to play. I'm not even that far, and I'm already flipping through pages trying to find things, and I'm kind of realizing that my idea, as cool as it sounds, is logistically challenging to do, because I have maps that start on one page and continue like 7 pages later. I have a city on one page that references caves, which are way on a different page, and I need to like cross-reference these things in the book by listing the page numbers, and it ends up being a lot of work. And so it's something that I still am excited to play. I still pick it up from time to time. I just don't do it as much as maybe I should or want to, maybe, because it's just a logistical challenge to play. Anyways, that's number 10, my Czech alchemist system. Number 9 on my list is Dungeon Crawl Classics. Now, I've done a lot of solo RPG campaigns in Dungeon Crawl Classics. I have several characters that are alive and well and off in my living characters folder, and they're just kind of hanging out waiting for me to go somewhere else. But I want to play a very short, focused DCC campaign, either exploring the magic system or the deity system through patrons. Now, I haven't figured out exactly what I want this to look like, but I think those two systems, the patron system, the patronage system with deities, and the magic system, are unique and so much fun in DCC that building a short campaign around them would be incredible. I think it would be a lot of fun. The one problem that I have with Magic in particular is that you kind of need the app to use it. It's really hard to do practically, because you have to reference each spell individually based on the dice roll you get, because there's so many different outcomes that could potentially happen depending on your dice roll. And quite frankly, using this book right here, every time I want to turn to a new spell, just seems, again, like a logistical nightmare. This thing is huge, which I love about it, but it doesn't, work well on a table when I need to look at a spell every 2 minutes or every 2 seconds. And so I'm still trying to figure that out a little bit. I'm just kind of letting it sit in my mind. I'll probably pick it up later this year, maybe next year, maybe the year after. But at some point, I will definitely sit down and do a short, focused solo campaign exploring either the magic system or the patronage system within Dungeon Crawl Classics. That's number 9. Number 8 on my list is not actually an RPG. It's an old war game called Ambush, with an exclamation point at the end. And I don't play war games really all that often. They're a ton of work to get into, in my opinion. Not everyone's, but my opinion, because I'm just not used to rule systems like war games as much as I am with RPGs. And so I just don't play them that often. I have played a few solo war games, and usually I do enjoy the experience. Ambush was, I think, developed and designed in the 80s, and it's a solo war game, and it's often praised as one of the best solo war games. The problem is it's hard to find. I'm sure there's PDF copies out there. I just haven't gotten around to really looking for those, but it is on my list and seems like a very interesting way to experience a war game. That is Ambush, number 8. Number 7 is another old school Dungeons and Dragons module called Blizzard Pass. Now, I actually created a video about Blizzard Pass and all of the cool things surrounding it, including the blacklight hidden messages and the website, the Blizzard Pass Project. You can check that out. I'll probably include a link in the comments below, or in the area below. But this looks like kind of a fun solo RPG or solo module to go through. It reads a little bit closer to a choose your own adventure than it does an actual RPG, but I'm not against that, and I think that actually will work well because I'll be able to start it and finish it relatively quickly, as opposed to some of the other items on these lists, which are really epic length campaigns. So that's the Blizzard, that is Blizzard Pass, my number 7. I gotta count these, sometimes I forget. Number 6 is Starforged, a solo campaign of Starforged. I backed, this is one of the only Kickstarters I've ever backed because I was enjoying Ironsworn when I saw the Kickstarter, so I decided I want to try out Starforged. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think I got physical copies, so I'm going to wait till those come in at some point, and then I'm going to sit down and play a very short and focused Starforged campaign, which is basically, again, Ironforged out in space. The strategy I'm going to use here is the same strategy I used with Ironsworn, and it's a strategy I am beginning to use more and more with solo campaigns, is I'm going to have a defined beginning and end point, and I'm going to have it be short. I will likely just try to complete the first vow, and then I can continue playing after if I want, or if I want to stop there, I will. So that'll be Starforged number 6. Number 5 is something I've spent a lot of time trying and failing at, and this is a Traveler campaign focused around a scouting expedition. I really love the idea that I would take one character in a scout ship, go out to either an unvisited system or maybe a system that hasn't been visited in hundreds of years, and they're going to go through their scouting system and identify what is out there and maybe find a few surprises along the way. Now, there's actually some really good resources at Drive-Thru RPG, 2 of them that come to mind, but I can't remember the names. One of them is about expeditions, and the other one is like a scouting workflow. Both of them present ways that you can bring a scouting character to a new system, and it gives you a checklist of all the things you can do as a scout in this new system to fulfill your scouting duty to the Navy or whoever you're out scouting for. The problem is one of these checklists is extremely dry. It's just not fun. You're literally just, it feels like you're generating the system as you are scouting, which is fine, I think, for a certain type of player, but that's not quite what I'm looking for. Because in addition to finding out the regular stuff about a sci-fi space system, I also want to find anomalies and secrets and random weird stuff and then try and figure out what's going on. And this resource just wasn't the thing for what I was looking for. The other resource that I found at Drive-Thru RPG, I wish I could remember the name of this one, is a very cool resource, but the focus isn't on scouting to scout. It's a focus on scouting to colonize and then build your own base, basically. So it's like a self-base building resource. So it's a very cool book, which gives you a lot of ideas around that area, but the scouting section is quite small. And so I would love to do a solo scouting expedition system. I was in the process of building my own workflow for this, and then I just kind of lost motivation on it. So I'll pick it up sometime, and eventually I'm sure I will get there, or someone smarter than me will build a better one, and I will play theirs, which would be preferable. And that is, again, a scouting expedition for solo traveler. My number 4 solo RPG I want to play is something I'm playing currently, and this is also Traveler. But instead of a scouting traveler campaign, this is not mercenary, it's a merchant. There we go, there's the word, a merchant campaign. And the focus here is that, again, one of my strategies as I create solo RPGs is I want a defined starting point and a defined ending point. So what I did in this campaign is I created a traveler character. I made sure, or tried my hardest to get them into the Army or the Navy or something like that. And then I had them end their army career early so that I could start the game when they were still relatively young. And the whole premise is that they are somewhere, I'm using travelermap.com by the way, and they are somewhere in the universe and they need to get home. And their home is, maybe 20 or 30 jumps away. The problem is they have only a certain amount of money, so they need to buy a ship, pay off the fees for that ship, and then try and make enough money along the way to get home. And so that's the goal. If I get home, the game's over and I win. If I don't get home, then I put the game down and decide later if I want to pick it up again. Basically, all I'm doing to playing is I am looking at the travelermap.com, where the location I'm at. I'm looking at the trade codes. I'm using the regular rules to identify how I can purchase goods, where I can sell them. I'm using the patronage rules to see if any patrons offer me a job. And I'm just using regular solo gameplay to try and figure out if I can get my character from where they are back home. And it's working really, really well. I haven't actually played that one in a few months, but I'm enjoying it a lot. And that is number 4, a merchant traveler solo RPG. I call it Bound Homeward, kind of like Homeward Bound. It's a pretty bad name, but that's number 4. Number 3 is actually one that I've been able to finish this year, and this is my Ironsworn and the Delve Ironsworn rules solo campaign. I sat down and I really enjoyed reading the Ironsworn rules. I love the vow system that is set up and the momentum around that, and I love how the skills and assets kind of all work with experience. I think it's a very incredibly cool system, and so I wanted to sit down and actually experience it, and I ended up with a really fun story. I ended up with my character had a talking spirit, I think, that kind of just followed them around, and that talking spirit became the center of the story. And it was very, very exciting for me to kind of make these connections as the dice flew around and I was using their oracles to realize that, oh, this talking spirit is haunting them, and it's haunting them because it's a friend of my character that once was there that they had actually killed, but I just still don't know the reason why they killed them, but it was not a good reason because that's why they got banished from their hometown. And so it was very fun to see a story emerge through the oracle system and the vows in that game. And again, my endpoint was finishing the first vow. And so my character was able to get back to their hometown. And then I put the game down, and it's in my still playing bin, which is full of all sorts of random stuff. And I might pick it up again someday, but I think there's some other things I want to experience first, like Starforged and like a few other things on this list. So that is number 3, something I actually finished this year, my Ironsworn and Delve solo campaign. Number 2 on my list is the Ghost of Lion Castle. This is an old school D&D module, and I've actually made a video about this, a long actual play. And basically the premise is you control an apprentice mage, and you are going into this lion castle, which is like a week's hike away. Inside you just explore. The module is actually set up for solo play, and so it kind of has these choose your own adventure elements, but it feels much more like an RPG than Blizzard Pass, I think, does on first look. And the really cool thing about the Ghost of Lion Castle is it is expected that you will die, that your character will die. And what happens is the character dies and their body's there, but they have this magic journal. And anything that they encounter in the castle, they're going to be recording. And then when they die, the magic journal reappears back in the town where your next character is waiting. And so this is really cool because it basically is a roguelike RPG before that was even a thing in video games. And I think that type of innovation is insane, even though it's a little hokey. It's very, very cool. But secondly, it lends itself very, very well to solo play. In fact, the way that I play this is I play 1 or 2 characters a month. And so when it's time to play, I sit down, I review everything in that magic journal, which is just, previous versions of me playing this game and writing down what I experienced. I determine how I'm going to approach the castle this time. I build my character, I build the supplies out and that type of thing. And then I see how far I get and see how much information I can add to the journal. Fingers crossed that it's quite a bit. And then, eventually when my character dies, I just put it down for the next month. And the great thing about this system is that over the span of a month, I completely forget everything that happened previously. And so reading the magic journal really does feel like I'm someone new reading the magic journal for the first time. And so I've been having a ton of fun with this. That is Ghost of Lion Castle, my number 2 solo RPG that I want to play and eventually finish one day. It'll be a long time because my characters have not been doing well. And the number 1 top 10 solo RPG that I want to play, or maybe finish, is the Great Pendragon campaign. This I also made a video of, and this is by far the most fun I've ever had in a solo campaign, solo RPG ever. I encourage you to watch my previous video on it if you have not already, but I have all of my stuff here, and that includes my characters, yes, because there's multiple, my family trees. Includes years and years of in-game times worth of journal kind of entries outlining what's going on, in-game history, and it's just been so much fun to go over and play. The Great Pendragon campaign is set up episodically, and it takes place over 80-something in-game years, so you are forced to play multiple generations within your family, and that's exactly what's been happening. It's absolutely incredible. There's a lot of really cool workflows set up outside of the yearly adventures that add a ton of depth to the gameplay. Add a ton of depth to the gameplay, and it's the most fun I've had solo gaming in an RPG ever. So those are the top 10 solo RPGs that I want to play or am currently playing. I'm curious to hear what your experiences are with any of these, or what some of your wishes are when it comes to top 10 solo RPGs. So let me know in the comments below. If you scroll down a little bit in the description, you're going to find links to the other videos, because some of these games I've done videos on, as well as, again, a link to my website where I design games, and a link to my Patreon page as well. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.